don't make the big deals that maybe people were hoping for, but they do make some smaller ones as the Yankees make trades with the Texas Rangers, as we've seen them do quite often, and the New York Mets, which is a surprise. It's not completely unseen. There have been some Yankees Mets trades in the past, not frequent, but these are deals which mainly involve relievers. The Mets one is a bullpen swap where the Yankees trade Jolie Rodriguez, lefty, who they acquired in the Joey Gallo trade last year, who I thought did pretty well as a Yankee. And the Yankees acquire Miguel Castro, who is a right-handed reliever who throws very hard, strikes out a lot of guys, but also the walks are high as well. So, bit of a high upside pitcher, and the Yankees have seen him quite a bit, mainly with the Baltimore Orioles over the years. And he was traded to the Mets in 2020 and was also with the Mets in 2021, was one of their most used relievers for what it's worth. And in watching him, he is tough to hit. I mean, I think he had maybe 48 hits allowed in 70 innings with the Mets last year, but also 43 walks and 77 strikeouts. So the whip tends to be on the high side, and but there's definitely, I guess you could call it untapped potential. I mean, he really should be someone that is at worst in the middle of that bullpen. But I could see him being someone that I'm frustrated with if he is just all over the place. But maybe this could be sort of like a Clay Holmes type situation. Although Clay Holmes, I feel like, was almost more of an undercovered, unseen gem for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Castro, I think, is more of a known entity. But, as far as the Castro for Joelle Rodriguez deal, the Yankees really, if there's one thing they have, it's a lot of lefty relievers. When you go with Chapman, Wandy Peralta, Lucas Licky, Zach Britton, I don't think we're going to see him this year with his injury, but the Yankees definitely had quite a lot of lefty relievers. And so they bring in Miguel Castro, and he is someone that, with Loaisiga, with Chad Green, with Clay Holmes, just to name a few, will probably find himself in that bullpen mix. And for the Mets, Jolie Rodriguez, like I said, I thought he did a really good job. He is definitely a lefty specialist. He's not, with obviously the rules being that you have to face three hitters, you definitely want to make sure that there's a good lane for Joely, as he does struggle against right-handers. But this is someone who, I thought was pretty good last season for the Yanks. Good ERA, although reliever's ERA is a bit misleading. And in looking at his stats, they're really not overly impressive. But just in watching him, I liked him. So I think this is a decent trade for both teams. But I do like it, just looking at it from a Yankee angle. I like it. I think Miguel Castro is someone who I think is someone who you think about as more getting those important outs, and someone who, with just the way he throws, has the ability to be a high leverage reliever. So I really have no issues at all with that trade. Even though I do like Joely, I think that trade for Miguel Castro is certainly worth the shot. And so we'll see. Another sort of caveat to this, and this is someone who I also liked, even though I don't think he was going to have much of a role, and that's the Yankees trading away right-handed reliever Albert Abreu. And I say reliever because that's kind of where he's been more so now, to Texas. And in exchange, the Yankees acquire what should be their current backup in Jose Trevino. He had been with Texas his whole career and played 89 games last season with Texas. About a 239, 5 homers, 30 RBIs, more of a defensive first catcher. Kyle Higashioka will definitely be the starter, who has just been on a tear in spring. What that means for regular season, who knows? But 7 home runs and about 23 at-bats is just kind of unheard of. And we've known that Higashioka has the power. That, if there's one thing in terms of his offense, he can hit for power. So, look, hopefully this could be like a Gary Sanchez situation, in a case where he can be a bit home run or nothing, but at least can provide better defense. So I really think that Higgy like Sanchez, obviously, when he's right, is of course a much better hitter than Higashioka, no doubt about that. But with the defense, um, absolutely, I think for Yankee fans, it'll be a lot easier to stomach than watching Sanchez with all the pass balls and just really. We've been at this for a while, and I'm happy that he's in Minnesota now. But this is an interesting trade. Albert Abreu is someone who I like. Abreu originally acquired in the Brian McCann trade. So Brian McCann was traded to the Houston Astros after the 2016 season. Albert Abreu was really the big piece that they acquired in that trade. And he looked terrible in the shortened 2020 season, I will say. But I really thought last season, and this is where ERA is misleading. It was a 5.15 ERA, but 36 innings, 35 strikeouts, a 1.25 or so WHIP, which is not terrible considering the ERA. Really, what it was he got blown up in like 2 outings. One specifically comes to mind at Tampa. He just got absolutely. It was a really bad outing. You take 1 or 2 outings away, the stats are a lot better. So I think Texas got themselves a really good pitcher here in Abreu. I guess if I'm looking at both trades, I like the Met trade better than the Texas one, even though Abreu, he was out of options, meaning if Abreu, didn't make the team, he was going to be picked up. Whereas, Trevino's not a great example, but Trevino, he could be sent up and down, as an example. He can be optioned down to Scranton, and, he's not subject to waivers, whereas Albert Abreu, I think, would almost definitely be gone. So I think in some ways they were looking at it as, he might be on his way out anyway due to a numbers crunch. And so let's at least get something of use for him. And I think, the idea of Rob Brantley as the backup was not great. Ben Rortvedt, who they got in the Twins deal, is still dealing with that oblique issue. And even in a best-case scenario, we don't know how he's going to be, right? I have no expectation for how effective he'll be as a Yankee. So Trevino is someone who I think you can probably pencil him in as the backup. Now, if he were to struggle, I don't think he's someone who has the track record where it's like, yep, he's just the guy. But when I see this deal, you would think that he elevates himself to backup status immediately. But I guess that remains to be seen. And the reason I say this is I really think Albert Abreu is someone who is still pretty young and is a pretty good arm. So, for the reasons I just mentioned in terms of his, lack of options in terms of being able to be sent down, that probably plays a role in this. It needs to be absolutely discussed when talking about this trade. But, I think that Abreu is a good find for the Texas Rangers. And the Yankees also traded away another pitching prospect in this deal, Robert Alstrom. Not really sure much about him, but figured that was certainly worth mentioning as well. So 2 pitchers go to Texas for Trevino. Nothing to be up in arms about, but yeah, not a huge fan of that deal just because I'm a big fan of Albert Abreu. But hopefully Trevino can be a serviceable backup catcher, at least in the beginning of the season. And with Abreu and with Trevino, these are guys that, for both teams could be under contract for quite some time, whereas Castro for Jolie Rodriguez, it's kind of just the 2022 deal, and you see where it goes from there for both sides. So it's really, money-wise, a pretty even trade when you look at it. And so that's more so, while that might be a more important trade right now, certainly in Texas' case with Abreu, long-term, he could be someone that I could definitely see being effective in the bullpen for the Texas Rangers. So we will find out soon who is going to be in the bullpen. The opening day roster for the Yankees. We should find out within the next few days with opening day right around the corner. And we'll discuss what that will look like. It'll start out as a 28-man roster. And I think maybe after the first month it drops down to 26. So it'll be expanded to start. So you won't have as many tough decisions, but I still think there will be some tough ones. And clearly they're still trying to work through that. So we'll see what happens. But again, Yankees make a couple of minor deals as we prepare for opening day, April 7th, against the Boston Red Sox.